again, and welcome to the Living in Faith Everyday podcast, the Life podcast. And this is our series I've entitled 66 Books, a series of 66 short podcasts that look at the 66 books of our Bible. And we've reached the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of the mystery of life. Ecclesiastes is definitely a profound, but yet for some, at the same time, a problematic book. Some people have described it as the most mysterious book in all the Bible. It is interesting to note that it is still a favourite book of many people, including some famous atheists such as Volney and Voltaire. The title, Ecclesiastes, was given to it by the Septuagint and comes from the Hebrew word for preacher. The author identifies himself as the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Although the name Solomon does not appear anywhere in the book, he is the only son of David who was also a king in Jerusalem, which is why the traditional view, accepted by both Jewish and Christian scholars, is that Solomon is the author of Ecclesiastes. Who was the book written to? The Recipients. There is an ancient Jewish tradition which says that Solomon wrote the Song of Solomon in his youth, Proverbs he wrote in middle age, and Ecclesiastes was written in his older years. In other words, he wrote on love as a young man, wisdom as he grew old, and the mystery and futility of life as an old man. Several authors suggest Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes around 935 BC. The book is not specifically addressed to anyone except the young man mentioned in Ecclesiastes 11:9, and Solomon does make a reference to a son in Ecclesiastes 12:12. Thinking about the message, Ecclesiastes is not a story or an argument that moves through the book in a narrative developed verse by verse. Rather, it is a collection of teachings and was probably pulled together into its present form late in the writer's life. Nevertheless, each section is related to the book's central message, and that message is presented at length in the opening two chapters, and then it is related and discussed in part or in whole in the following sections as you progress through the book. Like other Hebrew wisdom teachers, the writer is concerned with the apparent contradictions of life. He is not content to accept comfortable, orthodox theories, but examines the frustrations and the injustices that at times make life appear to be worthless and without meaning. But he's not a pessimist. He is seen to have a strong faith in God, and it is this faith that gives him his interpretation of life. Many believe the main subject of the book of Ecclesiastes is vanity. The book begins and ends with that phrase, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. The word vanity has a much more nuanced definition than our modern idea of foolish pride. The Hebrew word actually meant emptiness or vapor, something that was transitory, something that had no gravitas, that was unsatisfactory in its core idea. Recognizing the futility of life, the author then concludes that because of that, people should simply fear God and keep his commandments. The message of Ecclesiastes is, even though life can appear futile, at the same time we must recognize that it is a gift from God, which necessitates that we trust him and obey him. There are basically two main theories concerning the message of the book and the point of view taken by the author. The philosophical theory says that the author is a wise man who came to faith by reason, suggesting that Solomon later discovered that during a time whilst a lapsed believer he discovered that life apart from God was empty and that he should return to him. The spiritual view contends that the author is not a philosopher, nor is he a backslider, but he is simply a deeply spiritual man. He is saying that life without God is a mystery, And as a deep spiritual believer, he's saying, when I see life, it seems to me it is empty and aimless. There are aimless cycles, inexplicable paradoxes, yet life is still a gift of God that is to be enjoyed. Therefore, the message is that truly wise people should live their lives in obedience to God, recognizing that God will eventually judge all human beings. Thinking about the structure of the book, we see the book begins with the prologue, 1 through to 2:11, and ends with an epilogue, Ecclesiastes 12, 8 to 12. It starts and opens with this same statement, and beyond that seems to then go into 4 broad dialogues, each ending with a conclusion. The sections, which themselves have conclusions, are divided as follows. 1. The prologue, as I mentioned, which he says life is futile. Then section 2, the first discourse, looking at the futility of wisdom, pleasure, etc. Part 3, the second discourse, looking at the futility of various areas of life. Chapter 4, the third discourse, the futility of attainment. And in the fourth discourse, the futility and the uncertainties that lie in old age. And then that concluding epilogue is part 6. So thinking about why this book was written, there seems to be 2 different purposes of Ecclesiastes. One is to demonstrate that life is futile, as I said before, but Solomon is not implying that apart from God life is futile. He is saying that life is futile in the sense that it is filled with unfairness, uncertainties, changes of fortune and injustice, with or without God. So why not still trust in God? Contrary to how this may sound on the surface, this book is really not pessimistic at all. It teaches that in spite of the troubles, we are to enjoy life and trust God. It's important that we should not approach Ecclesiastes as if it was written by another priest or a prophet like some of the other books. The writer is not trying to explain the meaning of atonement, nor is he calling people to repentance. He is a wisdom teacher, one who encourages God's people to find the meaning in life that God really intended for them. The writer, like us all, is frustrated at times that we cannot know God's purposes, but he never doubts that such purposes exist. People should not therefore waste their time and energy searching about what God has always meant to keep to himself, but concentrate on enjoying what God has given to them, namely life and all it brings. However, this enjoyment must not be seen to be selfish or without restraint, for people can only really enjoy life properly when they act with wisdom. In other words, Ecclesiastes is saying that God has not revealed everything, and there is still and always will be a mystery to life. We really only know what God has chosen to tell us, yet life is not just a puzzle which wisdom unlocked. We must never lose sight of it that it is a gift given to us to enjoy and to use in a responsible fashion. So to summarize the book of Ecclesiastes in the short phrase, it's a book written by someone of great wisdom, an old man, most likely Solomon, and it was written to young people in general, perhaps even to his son in particular, to say that godly wisdom teaches that although life may appear to be futile, we are to still fear God, obey God, and enjoy life. Life is to be seen as a gift from God. That means we should enjoy it whilst at the same time trusting and obeying the Lord.